Hi, I'm Vanessa Raymond Garcia, and I'm the policy analyst with Regional Housing Legal Services. The report this presentation is based on was conducted by myself and my colleague, Cindy Daly. Thanks for tuning in to our series on funding resources for affordable housing and community development work. This is the seventh and final installment of the series that you can watch whenever you have a few minutes. Congratulations on making it this far. There is a web address at the end of this video where you can access the slides. RHLS is a nonprofit law firm with unique expertise in affordable, sustainable housing and its related components, community and economic development, utility matters, and preservation of homeownership. RHLS provides innovative project and policy solutions that help create sustainable communities, offering decent, safe, and affordable housing for lower-income Pennsylvanians. Just a disclaimer that this video is not providing legal advice. We're providing research that was published in early 2024, and the information within is subject to change. These videos are meant to be an introduction and overview of different funding sources. The information presented is pretty general, and each program has detailed guidelines. The videos are designed for people with limited housing development experience who want to know more about how to create affordable homes. We're focusing on resources for affordable housing development, and we will not be covering programs for tenants, home buyers, or homeowners. And we're just covering the major and most commonly used programs. If you have a development project in mind and want more information, get in touch with us. Our contact information will be at the end of the video, and we'll connect you with one of our attorneys. Within this video, I'll be discussing the state distribution, of affordable housing funding among 8 state and federal funding programs. They include the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, the Keystone Communities Program, the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, the Neighborhood Assistance Program, the Pennsylvania Housing and Rehabilitation Enhancement Program, the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program, and the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Housing Preservation Program. Starting with the introduction, the average home price in Pennsylvania is now $256,703, up from $179,523 5 years ago. As of 2022, 47.4% of Pennsylvania renters and 19.7% of homeowners are now spending more than the recommended 30% of their income on housing expenses. The median rent for the Philadelphia metro area was $2,342, The Pittsburgh metro was $1,841, and the overall state median rent was $1,647. The median wage in Pennsylvania has stayed at $7.25 since 2009. People of color and people with low incomes are disproportionately affected by exposure to substandard housing. Moreover, Black homeowners pay more to buy and own a home than their white counterparts, making not only the initial purchase difficult, but saving or borrowing money for home repairs difficult as well. If marginalized communities, like residents with disabilities or people of color living in historically redlined areas, are not explicitly prioritized in funding programs, these communities often get left further behind. There are several federal, state, and local government avenues for impact, and they include financial incentives to developers, zoning and land use policies, rental assistance programs, and housing vouchers, government-sponsored homeownership assistance programs, comprehensive regulations, including rent stabilization measures and tenant protections, monitoring the housing market and enforcement of laws, policies, and regulations, and the conductment of assessments of housing demand, demographic trends, and socioeconomic disparities. The Pennsylvania agencies administering housing and community development funds include the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, or PHFA, the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, or DCED, and the Pennsylvania Office of the Budget. Now we'll move into the discussion of programs. Community Development Block Grant funds are distributed to entitlement communities that are appropriated by a formula that accounts for a jurisdiction's poverty and housing conditions, as well as total population. In non-entitlement communities, they are administered by the Department of Community and Economic Development and distributed by State Law Act 179. The total amount of funding benefiting federal entitlement and non-entitlement communities combined over 2018 to 2021 was $731,532,212. Entitlement communities spend an average of 27% of their CDBG funds on housing, with annual percentages ranging from 21.5% in 2019 to 17.1% in 2021. In smaller non-entitlement communities, the spending on housing was significantly lower. The 4-year average for housing spending in non-entitlement communities was 12%, ranging from a low of 9.8% in 2020 to 13.2% in 2019. The remaining 83% of CDBG entitlement community funds were distributed among infrastructure, public facility, and economic development initiatives in low to moderate income areas. The Home Investment Partnerships Program is similar to CDBG in that it is a block grant, but is used exclusively for housing. HUD distributes home funds to participating jurisdictions and states according to a formula that considers poverty and rental housing conditions. As with CDBG, non-participating jurisdictions receive funding through DCED. However, there is no Act 179 equivalent for home, and all awards from DCED are competitive. The most common uses were home repair programs, down payment and closing cost assistance, acquisition and rehab for rental or home ownership, and new construction for rental or home ownership. According to the Public and Affordable Housing Research Corporation and the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the estimated number of rental units supported throughout Pennsylvania by home funding as of 2022 was 12,069. The home program supported Pennsylvania's housing concerns during the years analyzed by a total of $282,792,654, or $428,102,976, including the ARP distribution. It should be noted that the units built during a given year through LIHTC and FAIR are not constructed from the funds awarded during that same year. There is generally a gap of a few years between the award of the tax credits and completion of the project because of the time it takes to build. Yet it is worth examining both the value of the credits awarded and the number of new rental homes built during each year. Both units built and credits distributed have seen relatively stable levels from 2018 to 2021, with units built increasing by an average of 2% and credits awarded increasing an average of 3%. As of 2022, the estimated number of rental units supported throughout the state by LIHTC was 47,731. This table does not include funding allocated to statewide projects, which was allocated 12 times and totaled, $5,173,430 over 2018 to 2021. The bulk of FAIR's funding comes from the Realty Transfer Tax, with smaller amounts from the Marcellus Shale Impact Fee and the National Housing Trust Fund. Marcellus Shale funds are restricted to those counties with unconventional or fracking natural gas wells, and the National Housing Trust Fund money is dedicated to rental developments that also received LIHTC awards. FAIR is extremely popular with recipients because the funding is very flexible, and the program encourages creativity in how to best address local housing needs. Apologies for the very small graphs that you see in the slide. You'll be able to interact with them on our website, and we will have the link for that available with this video. The two largest bars in the graph at the top are for Allegheny and Philadelphia counties. Counties with large cities and larger populations, which means higher demand for housing resources. Other counties, like Forest, for example, are much more rural and are found toward the bottom of the graph because of smaller populations. The difference in funding levels across counties, in addition to reflecting population differences, may be due to more complex housing scenarios requiring multifaceted financial support. It can also be due to counties having knowledge of different federal and state programs available and taking initiative to apply for funding for their housing needs. The difference also reflects the very competitive nature of many of these programs, especially LIHTC, where a developer may need to submit a proposal 3 times before receiving an award. Certain programs have broad applicability and less restrictions, like CDBG, making them important resources of funding in supporting housing initiatives. RACP funds are one of the most prevalent sources of funding across nearly all counties. However, upon closer inspection, RACP does not contribute much funding toward each county's housing initiatives, as evidenced by the RACP-H category. This suggests RACP contributes plenty to community development initiatives, but not so much for housing. The following slides will show a couple of different maps depicting analysis of housing funding sources against different socioeconomic demographic information. Some counties here with darker shading, such as Forest, Center, and Fayette, have higher levels of poverty, but not a proportionate level of funding. Additionally, counties like Cameron and Columbia may be receiving a larger than their fair share of funding. For counties like Delaware, Dauphin, and Lehigh, their larger cities of Chester, Harrisburg, and Allentown/Bethlehem, respectively, have higher poverty levels than the rest of the county, but the cities are hidden in the rest of the county. This map likely does not show this discrepancy. Additionally, from this county perspective, many counties with higher poverty levels seem to be more concentrated in the western part of the state, where the geography tends to be more rural. Renters across the state are struggling. Renters in counties such as Forest, Center, and Pike are especially feeling the affordable housing crisis, with about 60% of their renter population spending more than 30% of their income towards housing expenses, and very small amounts of housing and community development dollars are being directed towards their counties. Alternatively, a county like Sullivan has the smallest portion of renters in housing crisis, but may be receiving a larger amount of funding to combat the issue. The reasons behind the high percentages of households with rent burden in counties across the Commonwealth could include multiple factors, such as local economic conditions and availability of affordable housing, but most importantly from this analysis, whether their county agencies and officials know where to look for and how to apply for housing and community development funds. Struggling homeowners with a mortgage are concentrated more in the northeast part of the state than anywhere else. Forest County is an outlier for homeowners with a mortgage struggling to afford housing expenses in the western part of the state. Counties like Cameron, Columbia, and Northumberland seem to have a higher share of funding for a smaller amount of struggling homeowners with a mortgage. On the other hand, Pike, Monroe, and Forest seem to have less funding available for their homeowners struggling to afford housing expenses. Many homeowners without a mortgage in almost the entire east part of the state are struggling with housing affordability. Counties like Pike and Bucks imply that other factors besides mortgage payments, such as property taxes, utilities, maintenance, etc., are most likely leading contributors to housing stress. Most of Pennsylvania's population is non-Black. Counties like Cambria, Northumberland, and Columbia have much higher dollars per person compared to their Black population. Counties like Monroe perhaps need more dollars directed to their county to aid struggling Black residents. For Forest County specifically, a potential reason for the county's Black population standing out from the rest of the region is a correctional facility that exists in the county. The most recent research showed Black people in Pennsylvania constituted 11% of the state's residents, but 37% of people in jail and 47% of people in prison. While counties like Center and Montgomery have higher shares of Pennsylvania's Asian population, their share of funding may not be sufficient. Alternatively, counties like Columbia and Cameron may be receiving more than their fair share of funds per person in the county. Pennsylvania's Hispanic and Latino population seems to be concentrated in the Northeast and Southeast regions of the state. Counties like Berks, Lehigh, and Pike may need more funding to assist struggling Hispanic and Latino residents. Other counties like McKean, Allegheny, and Cameron may be receiving more funding than needed for their residents. For Forest County, again, a potential reason for the Hispanic Latino population having a larger concentration is because of the state correctional facility. Latino people constituted 7% of the state population, but 10% of both the prison and jail populations. This slide describes some limitations of the research. The counties that are home to larger cities, such as Lackawanna, Allegheny, Erie, Northampton, Lehigh, and Dauphin, may have concentrations of poverty, higher cost of living, demographic distribution, and funding distribution within these counties that do not stand out, given the presence of other wealthier and/or wider municipalities. We were also unable to determine whether funds are directed to communities within the county, both geographic and by populations, with the greatest needs. Awards were distributed to some statewide organizations, therefore making it difficult to come to conclusions about what counties received this funding. Additionally, the year a grant was awarded may not have been the year the funding was distributed. This report chose to use the year a grant was awarded for continuity purposes. HUD's comprehensive reports did not always coincide with grants awarded for the same year, like with CDBG, for example. This report did not consider the fact that state prison populations are counted by the U.S. Census Bureau in counties where the prison is located, not where they formerly or continue to call home outside of the correctional facility. The one exception is made for Forest County, where the prison population is a relatively large percentage of the county population, thereby changing the racial and ethnic makeup of the census figures. An estimated 88% of the Black and 72% of the Latino population in the county were incarcerated in the county in 2015. Some avenues for advocacy for those that are interested. Develop relationships with your housing authority to advocate for the allocation of funds that addresses your community's most pressing needs. All local governments that receive CDBG or home funds must hold public meetings as part of their development of their comprehensive plan for how the money is to be spent. You should make your voice heard. Provide testimony at local city council meetings, legislative hearings, and other government forums where decisions about housing and community development funding are made. Organize members of your community, particularly those who are directly affected by housing issues, to participate in rallies, demonstrations, and lobbying days to show strong support for more funding. Join coalitions with other organizations and people in your community focused on housing and community development. Encourage them to contact their representatives, attend public meetings and town halls, and vote on issues related to housing and community development funding. Work with local, state, and national legal advocacy groups to challenge discriminatory housing policies and to ensure that existing laws are enforced to protect the rights of those in need of affordable housing. This report is intended as a resource for a wide range of stakeholders, including community members, local organizations, and policymakers. By analyzing the allocation of housing and community development funds, it offers insights into how these funds are being used to support housing and infrastructure needs across the Commonwealth. It is particularly valuable in helping identify areas where funding may not be meeting the needs of communities. Finally, this report underscores the importance of advocacy, collaboration, and strategic resource allocation to ensure that funding effectively addresses housing community development needs. Through informed decision-making and collective action, we can improve outcomes for communities across Pennsylvania. Thank you very much for listening to this video. And for more information, please contact us at any of the places listed here. And for our presentation, please visit the website www.rhls.org/PA funding report. And you can also find the full report that this video is based off of on that webpage. Thank you.